Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wild Woman Podcast. I have Stephanie Dowling Folan with me today from Galway and in Ireland, for any of you who are not from Ireland. I'm really taken by, there were certain words Stephanie just mentioned here, and she just says that she feels her gifts of touch, spiritual awareness, and sacred wisdom serve her as best as she navigates the path back to wellness with each patient. I thought that's beautifully said, and through lots of different modalities and things that she does, which we'll talk about on the podcast. So just welcome, Stephanie. Delighted to have you here today.
Thanks, Celine. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, it's really nice to connect. So what I'd love to do just to get started is you work obviously as a healer in many different modalities. I'd love just to touch on some of the journey that brought you to the work that you do. And I know it's always evolving, and you just mentioned to me before we went on air that you've been on a plant medicine weekend. We can go into that as well. And I think because it's always changing, isn't it? As we are always changing. Yeah. But I really believe in the sort of the path of the wounded healer. I think that's what we all are, really. So do you want to maybe just take us a little bit back into that story that led you to now?
Sure. It's funny when I hear people describe me as a healer, because would you believe most people I treat see me as a therapist. And that is truly what I am. I'm a physical therapist. I'm an acupuncturist. And that's how I started my whole career, for want of a better word. And it was probably about maybe 3 or 4 years into working full time as a physical therapist that I got ill with an autoimmune condition. And the autoimmune condition was something that was going to profoundly change my life and change the trajectory of my life, not only in what I do work-wise, but in who I was to become. And as a result of having that autoimmune disease, I had to find ways to get my body well. I had to find ways of figuring out what was wrong, what had happened, why it had happened, and never once not believing I wasn't going to get better, but how I was going to navigate the path of my way back to wellness. From that came my inquiry, my investigations, my, I suppose, deep dive into the mind, the body, and how they both connect. And undergoing therapies myself that I had never done before, never even knew existed before, beyond the physical. I discovered bioenergy, acupuncture, hands-on spiritual healing, meditation, essential oils, really good nutrition and eating and supplementation, and all of those things that I began to indulge in and try out, and then go on to learn myself, and then qualify in, led me down a whole new road of what health really was, wellness really was, and how to get there. And that's where I am today, using all of those tools on the physical, on the mental, on the emotional, and on the spiritual level. When people come into my clinic, they might only need a physical touch, a physical fix, a dry needling session. Others might come in, have some acupuncture done, might need some talk, some safe space to open up. Others might come in and it's a complete soul conversation, soul to soul. Their life is in a mess. They don't know why they have these constant pains. They don't know why they're in chronic anxiety. And my session can take on any modality or any role. And I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist that is qualified in psychotherapy. I'm not all those things people think I am, but I am, really. And I work from in here rather than up here. And when you get out of your head and into your heart and into that connection that we all have with each other, healing can be quite profound. And I'm always evolving. I myself certainly I'm a student of life. I don't know it all. I'll probably be 90 years old and still doing this job. Hopefully I will be able to do it, an old woman. I kind of feel a bit old at this stage, but as life progresses and as time goes on, I am constantly learning, and it's the way I love it to be. And I'm constantly changing, and I'm constantly healing. And I think that's probably what I'm here for.
Beautiful, beautiful answer. I just get a sense of, when you're talking, the reminder that we are all energy in motion. So everything we have to be always evolving, because that is who we are. You mentioned there about health and wellness and helping people in whatever way that shows up. Back to health and wellness, how would you describe what health and wellness is? Like, what does that look like to you?
I think for me, the true definition of health is waking up every morning and your 2 feet on the ground, happy, whole. When I mean whole, I mean there's a sense of connection. There isn't something missing. There isn't something that you're trying to achieve. And that this vessel that carries your spirit, your body, able to get up and take you through the day and do that without pain, without trauma, without search for something you haven't got. When you can wake up feeling that way, you're healthy. That's my definition of health.
So what role then do you see pain or illness plays in bringing us to that place?
Without doubt, the signal for us to do the work. We're either off track, something's not right, something needs our attention. Sometimes it's a trigger, but it's a wake-up call. When we have those, they're not even warning, sometimes they can come as warning signs. It can be a real illness, a really strong illness that would send us into fear, into overdrive. We need to go down the medical route, which we absolutely do. But going down the medical route, and even as I did, doesn't absolve your responsibility for the healing.
I think that's the key, isn't it? I think that's the key. It's about where our power is, and are we playing our role and realizing the power we have within. There's nothing wrong with who you work with, but you know, when I trained as a life coach, they used to call it white coat syndrome, not just in medicine, just in everything. When you sort of hand over and disempower yourself. Yeah, I think that's really, yeah, it sounds like it's a big part of that as well. And in terms of your own illness, without how, just for listeners, because you know, we all have illness and we all have pains cropping up, so I think it's really helpful to sort of maybe to share a little bit of what you felt that was showing you in your life and how it showed up.
Sure. It showed up very quickly. I'd never been sick. I didn't even have a GP because I never needed to go to one. So when something was wrong, I knew something was really wrong. It started with a short series of 4 symptoms that stayed with me for 8 months solid. Bone tired fatigue, body aches and pains that were transient. They could be anywhere in my body. Severe night sweats and nausea. And even listening to those symptoms, they're very trivial. They're not big things. They're, you know, they're small. They don't indicate anything seriously being wrong. So you can imagine, you know, going down the medical route, I was thrown from A to B to C, but there was never, ever, ever a change in how I was feeling. The symptoms just stayed constant, those 4 symptoms for 8 months. And I had a very good GP at the time. And even though he didn't understand what was going on, he sent me for all the checks. He sent me for all the tests that could rule out anything internal. And needless to say, everything was perfect. My bloods were perfect. My body was perfect. They didn't know what was wrong, so they wanted to give me antidepressants, which would have worked on my nausea strongly. And, you know, and to be fair to him, what he wanted to do was get rid of my symptoms, which is what they want to do. But I refused because I said, well, and I don't want an antidepressant to get rid of my nausea. I want to know why I have the nausea in the first place so strong. I obviously had been losing weight. I'd lost my appetite. But it was the other aches and pains and the sweating and, you know, all the other symptoms that really bothered me. And on about the 8th month mark, I got my first physical symptom, which was like a blinding pain in my eye where I could hardly see the light. I couldn't look at the light. Again, happened within hours. And it started in my eye. So I'll bypass all the stuff that happened in between. And what I eventually was diagnosed with was an autoimmune condition, a vasculitis, which is a blood vessel inflammatory, medium blood vessel inflammatory condition, which begins in the eyes, goes into the nose, goes down into the lungs, and ends in the kidneys. And when I got sick 16 years ago, 40 years before that, the 40 years leading into it, you'd have died from this condition. There was no known cause. There was no known cure. And even though I knew I wasn't going to die from it, they did tell me that it wasn't curable. It's autoimmune, but what we can do is we can maybe stem the symptoms for you. We can stop it spreading, but you will have to be medicated for life. So, of course, I didn't know any better. Yes, whatever we need to do, I'll take it, and off we go. And I did. And it was a horrific 16 months that followed of every medication under the sun, low dose chemotherapy, massive doses of steroids, all the medications then that offset all of that. I don't know how many infusions I got that were all set up to stem any activity of my immune system, to stop my system from functioning at a level that they felt would then prevent my immune system from, as the words they use, attacking. So I went with all of that and I did everything they asked me to do, and it didn't hit a solitary thing in my eyes. My eyes still were crying out. They were highly inflamed. My vision, which when I go into what we call bouts of inflammation, which were happening every couple of weeks, my vision would drop to about 25%. And it became quite serious that, you know, there was bleeds in my eye, there was possible clotting in my eyes. And they were worried about my eyes at the time, but they were more worried about when it was going to spread down lower. Whereas all I wanted to do was get my eyes fixed and get back to, even though I was still working, I worked through everything, including my treatment. I don't think I ever took a day off.
As a physical therapist, is
no.
it? No, you weren't at that stage, yeah.
No, as a physical
you
therapist,
were.
sorry, I didn't take any time off.
Yeah.
In hindsight, that was my way of dealing with how I was going to navigate my illness. But really, it probably wasn't the best thing, because I really never heal at the level I needed to heal. I understand that now, but it was what I needed to do at the time to keep going, to stop myself focusing in on being sick. If I kept working, because it was all physical work, so there was no other work involved at the time, that was easier to do. And I did that. And I had a 3.5-year-old daughter who needed me, and you know, she didn't really have too much of a mother for quite a long time, because I was hardly functioning in terms of, you know, the physical side of things. I was just, all my energy was into work, and then I would die at home. That's the way it was. So through a chance meeting with my husband and a friend of his, we got advised to maybe go abroad and have another opinion as to my treatments here. Did that. Got to meet a wonderful lady in London who advised another version of what I was doing, maybe a bit of a softer version, not sending in the army when all I needed was a soldier. And she suggested that I should be just localizing my treatment and get my eyes injected. And it would be much easier than systemically treating my body with the barrage of drugs that were going in, which were slowly killing me. And she agreed. She said to me, in another 2 years, you'll be lucky to be here, because your kidneys and your liver will not tolerate this level of medication. And I knew that. I knew that at a level very deep inside, but didn't know where to go with that thought. So made the decision at that time that I was going to slowly wean off all my medications, and I would agree to stay in the medical system and get my eyes injected. But that was as far as I was going to go. Steroids, immunosuppressant medication, all the other bone drugs, everything else was going to go. That was how I decided I was going to move forward. Obviously, went into early menopause. I was 39, 40 years old. My hair fell out. I blew up. I was unrecognizable, needless to say. Meeting some of my patients out was quite tough. One or two of them told me afterwards they actually didn't recognize me at all. And for me, it was a real turning point in how am I going to find my way back to me? What has happened here? What has gone wrong? Where did this autoimmune inflammatory disease come? And that's what the last 15 years has been about. Navigating that, discovering so much about myself. And no, it has not been easy. My consultants many a time begged me to go back on some of my medications, particularly when my eyes would clot or the inflammation would come roaring back and they'd have to inject me really quickly and get the inflammation back down. And, you know, I could see where their concern was coming from. But I took responsibility and I told them that. I said, I mean, I am taking responsibility for what happens here. I know it's not how you work. I know it's not what you want me to do. But I said, I died a death with that medication that I was on and I can't go back there. You know, I let you inject my eyes, no problem. That is as far as my meds will go. So then I knew I needed to find something else to help my body heal. And then I found all those saviors, those angels, those therapists, those wonderful healers that I met throughout my life. Some of them still I would go to, some I still talk with, even though I might not get treatments from. They all know who they are, and they all played a pivotal role in me discovering that I'm not just a physical body. I'm not just a lump of meat. I'm much more than that. I'm energy in motion. I'm vibration. I'm so many things that I never recognized. And maybe my body was looking for that recognition. Maybe it wanted me to see who I am at my core, at the essence of who I am. And I'm doing that. I can't say I'm fully there. Like I spoke to you about earlier, you know, I still go for my healing sessions. They're a bit different now than what they were, but they bring me back to that remembrance that there's a pure essence of who I truly am inside. And who you see speaking to you now and who I am is the personality self, it's ego self, which in a lot of healing modalities, they want you to ignore and don't let the ego take over and don't let the personality self take over. But it's part of us, it's part of who we are. There's some really good parts of that keep me functioning as a really good person who can help people at levels that maybe they are where I was at 16 years ago. They don't understand. And then you come to where I am today. There's a huge part of that ego and that inner self that meet in the middle that tell me, hold on, you've gone a bit too far over this side. You're starting to burn out now. You're ignoring the intuitive signs of burnout or fatigue, or you're maybe veering off the right path. And then I come back to myself again. But I have to take time out to do that. And, you know, the weekend of healing that I just had was exactly that. It was time out to realize that I'm a giver. It's nature of who I am. I'm a really good giver. I'm a really poor receiver. I shy away from people paying me compliments, from people telling me how good I am, from people loving my treatments. And I love that they love them. But a part of me inside goes, oh, don't really want to hear that, because sort of an imposter syndrome might kick in then, that maybe I amn't as good as I think I am at what I'm doing. But I never do it because I want to prove to people that I'm as good as I think I am. I do it out of love. But I have to be open and admit that there is a part of that is doing it because I'm trying to prove to people, look at me, look how good I am, and look what I can do for you. That's the inner child in me. That's the child that grew up in that way, that comes out and tells me those things. And that's what I have to work on all the time. That conditioning, that programming that I'm not good enough. And I think a lot of us have that in us. And a lot of us recognize it, which is really good. It's when we don't recognize it that it can become a problem. And I did lose myself for a lot of years in my work. probably trying to prove to others, look at me, look at how good I am. Not out of ego good I am, but look at how good I can be for you. Instead of recognizing how good I could have been for myself. And that's the work I still
do. Wow, that's incredible, Stephanie. I think for anyone listening, and for me, as I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh my God, every fiber of my being is just like vibrating. And I'm noticing more and more, like with you, when we meet each other there in that truth in our heart, that is where the healing happens and where the shifts occur. And what really struck me when you were speaking there as well, and you talked about an autoimmune disease and inflammation, and then talking about you're a giver and energy and motion and receiving, that to you is the autoimmune illness, does that sort of reflect that sort of giving and receiving, that maybe there's an imbalance in the body, you're almost turning on yourself like that? To me, there's something in that, in not allowing that receipt. Does that make sort of
100%.
sense, or how you see it?
That is exactly what has happened. I have, in some level, negated who I truly am. I've neglected myself, and my body is shouting at me to come back. That feeling of not being good enough at a very deep level means I've suppressed who I truly am. And when you suppress and you depress all your life, as Gabor Mate would say, women do it really, really well. He will tell you that autoimmune in women is the percentages are so much higher than in men, because we tend to be the emotive, sensitive givers. We're fixers. We want everybody to be okay. We give, but we suppress the aspects of us that are just crying out for that love and that attention of self. And with autoimmune, or any disease that comes shouting through the body, what we have is that inner rage, that inner anger. It's probably spiritual anger, spiritual rage, a spiritual crying out for, where am I? Who am I? Come back to me. And unless the body gave me a symptom, I used to say this at the very beginning, actually, when I first got sick, that a train wouldn't have stopped me where I was in my life. A train wouldn't have stopped me. But I had to be radically stopped. I mean radically stopped with the condition that I have. And the other part of that, I think, even as I'm talking to you now, 10 years ago, if I was speaking to you, I would have said that my trauma and my illness and my pain was the instigator of where I am today. But I actually think I'm moving past that a little bit now. And I don't want my trauma to be the driver I am anymore. I want why it was there, how I navigated, and where I've come to today, which is that self-acceptance, self-love, which I'm working on to be my driver. Not my trauma, not my pain, my love for me. And I know I have a long way to go for that, but I'm working it. And I know I'm getting there. But I think that's going to be my new driver.
That's beautiful, because we do talk about our trauma so much, and it does inform, obviously, part of. And also what I hear you saying as well is, in terms of how we're all brought up and conditioned, I know we keep hearing that, but it is a part of the reality we come into. Is a part of that for you? To me, when you talk about, the head and the heart and the ego, and there is obviously it's as someone described it to me, it's like the car our essence or energy is in. We need it. We can't navigate this life without it. But what I'm sort of feeling more is there's the sort of distorted ego, and there's the pure, ego, the sort of more aligned, that is helping you function, where the separation, this has been part of my journey. Just interested to hear what you feel about this, is been, as you unwrap all these layers of, like what you're saying, I need to be this, I need to be that, I have to be good at that. This is all sort of distorted type of beliefs that we take on. And then the journeys, the ego isn't bad, but it's like, is that to you a big part of it as well, because we still have to function. So
Yes.
it's unwrapping all of what it's unlayering. To me, that's, we come in very pure, we pick all this stuff up, and then we're layering it off to come to where you are now, which is saying, okay, I want to operate now from my pure essence and who I really am and my love. Like,
Yes,
it's, yeah.
that's it. And that's the
Mm.
part we have to find. I think it's the Jesuits that used to say, give me the child and I'll show you the man. And they knew that the conditioning and the programming and the baseline of what we build our beliefs, self-beliefs and life beliefs on are in the first 7 years. So those first 7 years is our conditioning. So regardless of
Yeah.
where we come to at 47, 57, 67, those first 7 years are the driver of my conditioning as I age. So those belief systems and thought patterns and my view of myself began probably in utero. And then as the child that grew up in those first 7 years in my household, I learned the behaviors of suppression of my own emotions, being very, very quiet. My mum used to say to me, you were such a good baby. We never even realized you were there. That's how quiet I was. And I see that was that a great thing? I used to think that was such a good thing. But in hindsight, I think now looking back, was probably so quiet because as a child, I didn't know any better. I was just absorbing what was around me. I was absorbing, you know, life as it happened in my household, which was wonderful, I thought. And it is, a lot of it was really good. But now looking back on mum and dad, who've both passed away, you know, they were very emotionally empty themselves. And they learned that from their parents and they learned that from their parents. So a part of me grew up with that emptiness, that emotional emptiness inside. And probably as a child, at some level, I must have believed that it was my fault and I must have done something wrong. So for the rest of my life, I was going to try and prove to people, look at me, I'm good, I've done nothing wrong. And I do it through what I can give to other people. I do it through service. So the ego or my personality self was formed based on my beliefs. But now I'm older. I'm not a child anymore. I'm not that 7-year-old. Now I understand. Now I'm aware. Now I can work with it. And people often say to me, well, how do I know what's in my unconscious mind? How do I know what my thought patterns are, my belief systems are? How can I fix them when I don't know what they are? And Bruce Lipton, it was a great sentence that he said, you want to know what's in your subconscious mind, look at your life. What's going on in your life? Because your life projects what you believe. I thought, oh my God, thank you. Now I get what my belief systems are. So I looked at all the different areas of my life. Some I was really happy with and some where I wasn't. And then instead of looking out there and trying to fix out there, I began to understand, well, that's my projection of what I believe to be true in my relationships, in my sport, in my friendships, all the different things where things weren't quite right. I look at it as being, I reflect it back to me. Where in me do I not like what I see out there? And I work in here to fix it rather than trying to out there.
I know, isn't that just the
yeah? It was such a good
challenge or the lesson of life and the triggers. And we can say all these things, they sound so cliched, but I'm finding more and more. I literally this morning, I've booked into next year a shamanic retreat in France. I'll just give you an example of what came up, exactly of what you said. And I asked, well, can I'd love a room on my own, you know, and she came back. It's very interesting. And she said, well, the single rooms are booked in Celine, as you know. She didn't say, as you know, I'm saying this. But she said, you know, when you're on a shamanic retreat, in life, everything is a mirror. Everything is. And I could feel it. I could feel this. Oh, but I can't hide then. Where do I go to hide? You know, it's very interesting. So it's already starting and it's a year away. So I just think that's so, isn't it? It's very, it's everything is coming back. And it's very, so when clients come into you and what you say, it's so beautiful, Stephanie, you just reflecting on where you're at. and where you've been. It's just such a powerful message you're sharing. But when clients come into you now, and I know you said it differs, everybody obviously is different, is there more of an openness now, do you think, to looking at the spectrum of health and wellness in a more holistic way than
for sure.
There has to be, I know there is, but
there is.
Is it, would you notice it markedly different in the last 4 or 5 years even? Because so much has changed in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yes, no, it definitely has. And there has been a change of people's questionings. They are opening up to, there will be a time I'd never take out a piece of sage, ever, in my treatment room, for fear of, I know I've been called a witch many a time in my room, which
we are all witches, so we might as well
very insulting at the beginning.
Go,
now
we're safe in this lifetime to be a witch.
Oh, when somebody calls me the witch, I think this is, when I started using my essential oils, they thought I was a witch. When I brought out the sage, they thought I'd lost it. I mean, altogether. And then when I introduced my feather, which I got from a shamanic, one of those festivals or whatever, and I thought, oh my God, I'm getting braver as it goes on. But it was because I began to realize, and how I explain to people when they walk in is that vibe when you come in my stairs, up my stairs, and you walk into my room. What do you feel? And all the men, everyone will say it. Oh, there's such a feeling when I walk in here. They feel it straight away. And I said, what you're feeling, energy. That's energy. We're all energetic beings. We're all vibrational beings. So when I'm saging them, I'm telling them that I'm working with energy. But I also know that sage can be a really good herb for, viruses or bacteria, so I use that first, and then they can identify with that, and then they're used to the whole idea of what the sage does. I don't ever expect people to have to get it. You don't have to get it, but there's a trust between them and me. And it's because they know I'm coming from pure heart. So they just let me do what I need to do. But the change in consciousness has really, opened up, like, the question, like, what's going on and what's happening in the world. And we can all see that there's a huge transformation taking place. The world is not as we know it. It's never going to be as we know it again. It's transforming. It's on all levels. And what people do find difficult is, I find of all of the things I ever speak to people about, is the hardest thing they find to accept is that it's not just us. It's not just planet Earth and us. And they'll say, so do you believe in aliens? Do you think that there's other people on other planets? And I went, maybe. And I said, what makes you think that we're the only people that are here? Why do you not think that there's other people around? But sure, no one's ever seen them. There's never been proven. And I said, well, what if it was? What if there was other life? Maybe because we don't know that it's there, doesn't mean it's not. I said, you could be right. It's like the people who say that there's no life after death. Once you die, it's done. They're entitled to their opinion. Maybe they're right, but maybe they're not also. And they say, but how do you know that there's life after death? And I will always answer, no matter what anybody asks me about any topic, and I give the answer that I know to be true for me, I'll say, I just know. I know. I feel it. I know. Doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. I just know. I don't have to prove it. I just know. So what is happening is the world is changing, and people are beginning to realize that we've been under a lot more control than we thought we were. We thought we were free. But really, the last couple of years and with everything that went on, we began to see how much control we really were under. And a lot of people are coming out the other side of that, wanting more of their own freedom. They want freedom to make their own decisions. They want freedom to make their own medical decisions, their own decisions about where they go, what they do. Now we're even seeing that, decisions are being made for us about what we post, about what we put up online. And people are beginning to see that there's a control kicking in that they don't like. And I just think it's a really good thing that all of this is being exposed, because nothing heals until it comes into awareness. And we need people to see what's really going on. There's a lot more going on than people had realized. But I think they're waking up now to what's really happening. I hope they are. I truly hope they are. Because there was a part of me over the last couple of years that wishes I didn't know I wish I didn't get involved in all of this. I wish I didn't know that there were chemtrails in the sky and it's not just a conspiracy theory. I wish I didn't know that our food was, not real food anymore, that our water isn't pure water anymore. So instead of getting caught up in the whole, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I got proactive. So I start using my local farm for my organic food or my organic vegetables. I start blessing if I can't get organic and I can't get clear water, I bless my food. I bless my water. We have loads of tools within us to change what we said we were earlier, the vibration of what we consume and who we are. And there are loads of ways around that. And when it comes to healing, it's the same thing. So when people come into my clinic and they want to know what they can do outside of me, I give them the tools to, well, what are you doing from a nutritional perspective? What are you doing from an emotional or headspace perspective? Where are you getting your time out? How are you connecting back into yourself? I don't have time for that. And I'll say, it's fine, it's no problem. Do you exercise? Where would I get time to exercise? Okay. So this pain that you have in your back, this is how then I bring it into their lifestyle. If I told you that walking 10 or 15 minutes a day might get the blood to flow, might get circulation to flow, might loosen up your joints a little bit, and actually might reduce your pain a little bit. How does that sound for you to try and do it 2 or 3 times a week and then maybe reduce your pain medication? Could you try it? Well, maybe I could. But you have to almost give them the what's in it for me if I do this. That's where I try and bring it back to. That there's the body's pains, aches, illnesses, and symptoms are a call out to you that something is off kilter. You and you alone, not me, your therapist, you. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
You can't come into me and expect me to fix you completely. I can do a really good job of helping you in A, B, and C, but outside of me, you're only here for an hour. What are you going to do? Yeah. And that's where people are really beginning to, okay, they'll open up. They'll ask the question.
It's beautiful how you say that, Stephanie, because I just get the image of you. If we have been so controlled and conditioned for so long, we don't believe we have that ability and power. There's this learned helplessness I think we all have had. So it's lovely how you say there's no point bombarding someone with all of this, but just, it sounds to me like you're leading someone gently back to themselves. You're just sort of nudging them. You're not telling them or anything. You're just nudging them in the direction of exactly what you gave. That's just gorgeous, and then a point maybe will happen. Like I had cancer, I had to get a major bang over the head. I had a good few of them too. And I'm glad, because I wouldn't be here otherwise, really, if I kept the way I was going. So it's lovely to see that there is a point I think happens where, and I was up against that as well, where am I going to take responsibility in this, or am I going to hand it over? And I just knew I couldn't. I knew the time was now. It's this or die. Like really, it was within a certain period of time. So it's really lovely that, more and more people hopefully are more gradually finding their way back and then saying, oh God, I do have a little bit of power in my life. Because when I did do what Stephanie suggested, maybe walking a few steps, I did start to feel the benefit. Like, to you, like, and we all hear about healing, and it's beautiful what you're saying. And then I sort of go, well, okay, for you then, what is that all about? I can say what it is about for me, but like in terms of bringing people back to that sense of self. So how do you see, what is it about then from there? Like for people, you're on this journey in life, you're doing your healing. I know we're always healing. My sense for me is it's bringing me back more and more and more into the essence of who I am, and then to express or create, to be the creator or that I'm meant to be in this life, and devoid of all the other noise and distortion. And then we come into, don't we? We come in feeling, for me, a sort of more natural alignment with each other, and things flow more naturally. How is it in terms of how you see it? Yeah.
So everything you said is exactly how I would think. And then when you come to that essence of who you truly are, and well, I hesitate to say maybe that we're And maybe there will be a part in this lifetime where I would truly feel like I have the work done on the healing aspect. And then from there, I just need to be, none to do anymore. So by me just being the essence of who I am, that love, that light, that compassion, all of those beautiful things, which I already am, I'm just clearing all this mess out of the way to let me realize this is who you always were.
I think of the 40 coats.
That's what these layers that I work on, that we work on to heal, are basically just taking away all those coats of what we've been carrying that has been hiding the essence, the true essence of our light, who we are, the true who we are, and what we're all here for. We're always about doing and going out and doing more and fixing. And really, I want to just be, but I couldn't just be me until I realized what it was I was carrying and what it was I thought I was. And I'm
not.
No. And instead of thinking I'm less than and I'm lacking in some way, I'm actually so much more. That's the whole paradox of all of this. When we actually get there, it's like you were all of those things and more. And that's where I'm working my way towards. And that's when I help somebody and I work in my clinic every day. I want to take people closer to that part of them that is more, that they haven't.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And to me, when you're saying that, like coming back, I mean, it's all happening, I sort of sense at the same time. You're healing, it's not we stop and we heal, but also in the being, what I'm feeling more in me. Yes, I'm being in someone else. You're not going to sit around all day, but to me, it's a different sense of being. Your activity is coming out of like a joy of, oh, I feel drawn. Like I much more now in my life as well feel a very strong urge to do something or not, and it's in my body. It's not in my head. I'm not led by my head. Well, sometimes I am, but in most cases, I try and live from. And I think that's where that shift, because initially you can think, oh, but if I come out of my head into my body, sure, what about, and just being, but it's a different type of activity, isn't it? It's this sort of flow. Definitely. And it's beautiful. It just, yeah, it's very replenishing. That's the way I feel it, as opposed to draining.
Well,
isn't that the shift? Yeah, yes. From
the big difference, and you're right, and maybe I should clarify, because people who aren't in this whole environment of spirituality or awakening or healing think, when we talk about being, that we're sitting in meditative state like Buddha and we're doing nothing. But when I talk about being, just being me, that then projects me out into life to do those things that my heart is looking, that my soul is looking for, instead of the roles that we take on. It's not a role, it's not something I have to do. It's not someplace I have to be. I don't have to perform. I just will go now with, as you say, enthusiasm and energy into what it is I want to do. Whether that be go to my CrossFit class or take up art or go on a safari, but I'm doing it because I'm just following the essence of what I want to be, rather than what I have to do and where I have to be. And people will say, oh, but Stephanie, like life, that's life. You have to work and we have to pay the bills and we have to. And I go, yeah, I do too. But I do it now out of wanting to do it because it feels right. And when going into work doesn't feel right for me, then I'm not working out of my true essence. I'm not being, I am doing something that is fulfilling a role for somebody else. And that's when I change. Right now, it feels like the right thing to do. The only change I probably need to make with work is my boundaries can sometimes slip. And when I'm tired and I feel, or I get a phone call or I get a message from somebody who is in a terrible state, there's this inner part of me that feels I need to go out there and I need to go in there and I need to fix them, even though I am tired. That's not me being, that's me doing. And sometimes I can't come from a place of purity and love and giving when I'm sacrificing. I used to fool myself into believing but this is what I want to do. And I love doing this. But while I'm abusing my own self, I'm not giving in love, because I have to give to myself first. So that's what I mean about connecting to that essence of who we are and be who I truly am. Then I can give more to my sessions and to people who come to me when I'm working from this inner part that loves herself first and wants that rest and needs that break, and will take all of those, and then we'll go into clinic and do the work that she needs.
What do you do to support yourself in that when that arises? Because I'm familiar, and I'm sure everybody will be, of that. So when that going out to do and knowing I do really need to look after myself, how do
Yes.
you, because it's still difficult because
Yeah.
the world
Yeah.
isn't necessarily supportive of that. It's changing. I'm not saying the world, but just the systems and the way it's set up isn't
Yes.
fully supportive, even though I know it's our responsibility. Nothing changes till we change. But so
No.
what do you do to...
I do two things. One in the physical and one in the energetic spiritual world. So in the physical world, I really look after my body as well as I can. I love to train. I've always loved to train. Sport has been an integral part of my life growing up. I love the gym. I love to box. I loved
Wow.
kettlebells. I love to do weights. I played rugby in a previous lifetime. I actually played for
Wow.
Ireland in a previous lifetime. You might have known
Wow.
that.
No.
Yeah, I have international caps for
Incredible.
Ireland. I love activity. I love my sport. I love to feel strong in myself. I love to feel fit. It really helps me in my role every day. Then when I need to get out of that adrenaline-driven roundabout, I go for shamanic healing, spiritual healing, and I've done some plant medicine. And the plant medicine, for me, is a beautiful way of really taking me out of this surrounding dense world that I'm in, out of my mind, and really into all parts of my body. And how it does that is you are always aware and always conscious in ceremony, but the medicine takes you out of the thinking mind and into the deepest parts of yourself. And as you can imagine, that is not always pretty. So I'm very sensitive to medicines. I'm very sensitive to plant medicine. So I usually have a brutal, beautiful experience, all in one. And the brutal part is that I'm very prone to hurting. I get severe nausea. And I know that the depths of me are being searched out and taken up and taken out. And it's through that process, which is very difficult to explain to people because you have to experience it. Through the process of purge, which is elimination, you're taking out the denseness and the heaviness. But what follows is a bringing in of the lightness and the connection to that essence of who you are and that love that you are, that sometimes find hard to see on a daily basis. Plant medicines also give you a real sense of, when you're in ceremony, of what love is, truly is. Because you can't touch it, you can't describe it. Those words couldn't describe what it is. It's so beautiful. And when you're in medicine, you're it. You actually realize this is me, this is who I am. And sometimes you don't want to come out of medicine because I want to stay here. It's like people that often describe their near-death experience when they have it. I want to stay in the light. I just want to be here. It's so beautiful here because it's peaceful. But that comes with the plant. It's a beautiful tool, and it is just a tool, and it is not for everybody. We don't need the plant, but it is very, very helpful when we want to heal out of the mind and in the body. That's where I find the plant can be.
Mm.
And they're the tools that I use the most. I don't do a lot of plant medicine, but I use it when I get called. People say, what do you mean by being called? And being called is, there's this draw that you find yourself looking it up, researching it. Somebody mentions it. Somebody else all of a sudden has done it. And then you start thinking about it all the time, and you think, God, I wonder if I tried that. Would it really help me? And it just doesn't leave you. And then all of a sudden you see somebody posts, oh, there's a plant medicine ceremony going on and so, and you find yourself there. And I find myself there sometimes, and
Yeah.
I just know I need to be there.
But isn't it beautiful as well what you're saying? Because that's a reminder of when we come back into the body, and from where you're saying the shift in the evolution of the sort of control or conditioning back to our power, that what starts to happen, I've noticed as well, is you just know because you're listening to that aspect of yourself that knows. Doesn't matter what you want to call it. But as you said, I find that I can wake up at sometimes 6 in the morning and just I have to do something, like it just, or it could be a different, I just know it's a draw. It's not I should, and the head shouting at you,
No.
giving out, isn't it? It's a very different voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It
what's
is.
lovely as well, what you're describing as well from the plants, to me, it's been a journey I'm on, is realizing everything is conscious and everything is alive, isn't it? And we
Oh,
don't,
yes.
this is another part of, I know not maybe some people have experienced it and some maybe have not, but it definitely started to happen to me after cancer, because I went into that place of peace and everything fell away and I got a glimpse of it and I didn't want to come out of it.
Yeah.
And then I'd come back into the world, and then you start the
Yes.
doing, the living, and all of
Yeah.
it starts. But what was I going to say there? Yeah, but that sort of connection to nature and everything, you start to. So was that the key? Sorry, I'm jumping around here
No,
because
you're
just
okay.
that you said. So the purging to me as well, because I've gone through it in a different way emotionally for about, again, I explain. I won't go into it because I've mentioned it before, but it was an emotional purging for about 2 months solid that just came on. The But it's like, if we go back to the idea that we are energy in motion and we're some sort of a spark of consciousness of what we came from, whatever you want to call it, and we are energy. What is the purge then to you? It's when we get blocked as well, like we're constantly, because we're not living in a world of flow. So is that why the purge is so important? Is that where it shows up for you, that
Yes. Yes. It's
why
the
it
purge.
shows
The
up?
purge is, it is, it's the denseness, the heaviness, the thickness almost of how much we've accumulated. Maybe not even in this lifetime, maybe in other lifetimes, maybe what we've taken on from our parents, our ancestors. We carry all of that in our bloodline. And at some point in families, somebody cuts that cord and we stop transference of our history to the future. And my daughter was my big influence for me to do this work, because I was determined that I didn't want her to carry the denseness of what I felt was in my body. Not that I don't want her to go through anything, that she will go through whatever she has to go through in life. But she doesn't need to carry this stuff. And I felt with the purge, the plant is very sacred. It comes from Mother Earth. We call it the grandmother medicine. It's held in reverence. The plant ceremony is all in reverence. You take it in reverence and in gratitude. And it's like Mother Earth gives you something to heal you. And that heals from her. So when we purge, we give that back to her. And she takes it with loving, open arms. And that's that connection that nature has with us. It's you're right, there's a pulse everywhere, in the trees, in the flowers, in the grass. That's why it's also grounding. It's full of the life that we are. So when you take plant, you are connecting to that part of the plant inside of you. It does such beautiful, powerful work. And the purge it's taking up and out of you what you no longer need to carry. And it asks you to give it to it in open arms. So we always give our purge back to the earth. That's how it works. So it's beautiful. It's beautiful how Mother Earth has given us so many healing tools and modalities. And even though I don't want to harp on about it, but I'm going to say this and I'm going to say it now. Those plants and those tools that Mother Earth has given us are what has been taken from us by our world today to heal. We've been given so many pharmaceuticals shoved into our bodies. And all you have to do is look at America today, and I use America because it's such a big nation, 54% of the children in America are medicated with autoimmune. Over half children. Most of them are on 5 medications or more. So I am not knocking pharma. I've used it. And if I need it down the road, I will use it where it's going to help. But now that I'm using plant as well, I have seen plant work with me on levels that no medicine could heal. It just couldn't heal where I am today. So when I go in and I get my eyes checked because my consultants want to see me, they don't understand why my disease is gone. They don't understand how everything could be so perfect in there that has been lasered 70, 80, 90, 100 times. Cataracts because my eyes were so badly steroided all those years. And yet I can still see properly. Because plant medicine can heal. It can heal at a level that is beyond what our minds can comprehend. And I truly believe that if we can get back to, we get our medicine and food, if we get back to really eating well, eating clean, maybe using like pure essential oils, the pure plants, but some of the smaller stuff, maybe some of the bigger stuff down the road, but get used to, instead of just grabbing a medicine for a headache or a pain in your stomach or whatever it might be, there are so many good things out there that can be used to heal. Mother Earth has given us everything that we need. Just have to find it again and understand how we can use it and use it at the level of the connection that she has with us and that we have with her. We are all of what's out there, and we have to connect back to it.
Yeah. And you know what I hear when you say that? It's that book by Wayne Dyer, I Can See Clearly Now. And when I hear of you talking about your eyes and all on how can you see, and the way you're speaking so eloquently, it's like, well, this is what it's taking. It's like a seer, you know, this is what it is in the shamanic sort of world, isn't it? You know, this, it's a vision that is beyond what we have been conditioned to believe our vision is. Like, it's very obvious from you. So if you just keep going like this, Stephanie, you know,
I hope
like
so.
It's just such a beautiful example. All I could think of when you're speaking is that this sort of clear vision that has opened up. It's beyond the eyes.
It's beyond, and I'm laughing because I had that book, and I was reading that book maybe 10 years ago in the throes of my condition.
I know.
And I used to go to sleep at night giving out to Wayne Dyer. I
know.
Clearly now, but I can't see clearly. I couldn't see clearly. I mean, and my condition, like, was going on and on. I mean, it was 12, 13 years of the injections. And I used to say to them, when am I going to see clearly? And it was almost like,
that's so interesting. You were asking them, I was
asking them, you know, when am I going to see clearly? And when is this going to go? And the feeling it was always the same words that came in. Your work is not done yet. And I would remember sitting, waiting for my injections in the hospital, knowing my work's not done yet. So that's the reason I'm here, Stephanie. My work's not done yet. And I knew there was always a point I would get to where I would not need those injections. And people would say, but how do you know that? And I'd say, because I just don't know how I know. I know. I wouldn't be on this road if I didn't know. I mean, I really was following my gut. I went down that route of healing. I really was. And was I afraid? Of course I was. And was I scared when the vision was starting to drop? And I was, I'll tell you how scared I was. And some people don't know this. I used to go into the gym on the treadmill, and I would hold on to the treadmill rails to run, so that I could feel what it would be like to run. I would close my eyes. I said, if ever I went blind, I'd know what this feeling was like. So that if I had to run, because I was never going to give up my training, I was going to be able to run on the treadmill.
Oh my God.
Blind. That's how scared I could have got. But I never let that take hold. I did that quite a lot of times, closed my eyes and held on and ran. So I get that feeling in case I go blind. But then part of me knew, that was my head kicking in. But a part of me knew inside, you're not going to go blind. Don't be stupid. And I just did work my way out of those thoughts. So no, I didn't go through all this road of healing and think I had it right and I was going to be okay. I was afraid. I was angry. I was scared. I was questioning. And because I have a hugely questioning mind, it probably brought me down so many great roads. And I still question all the time. I'm very analytical. I'm very, how does this work? Wanting to know why it works. And sometimes there are things like when it comes to nature and nurture and spirit and vibration, there was a lot at the beginning I couldn't understand, and I was just told to trust, which I did. But analytically, I wanted to know, but what's really working? How is it working? You know, what is energy? What is energy doing in my body? And then I began to realize that every cell of my body is just millions of atoms. They're all energetic. It's all vibrational. And every time you put something in, you will affect the homeostasis of those atoms, of that vibration. Every time you listen to something, you speak something, you hear something, you drink something, you're changing the homeostasis of how your cells are. Everything is energy, which is why it's so important about what we observe, what we absorb, what we listen to. That is really, really important. That we take that time out of just quietness, just solitude and quietness. 5 minutes in a day is all you need. And just sit. That's it. Just connect back to your breath, the sound of something, the sound of nothing, just quietness. Just come away from what's going on and connect back in, and then off on the daily business. It's just a reset.
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah, it's a plug-in. You know, the way everyone says that, you know, it is, I believe, the Matrix film is a documentary, it ain't a film. But, you know, you're plugging out of, if you want to call it the, you're plugging out and plugging into yourself. It's like recharging your phone.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
where we're out there and the energy is being, so that's to me how I very simply just go, you're just plugging into your power source. Your power source isn't out in the world. Your power source is in here, in your heart, in your, you know, and heart, I think often people can think, you know, the emotional heart, the heart being more our connection to our essence, our energy, I suppose. It's where our how would you describe that? Because that can often be misconstrued as, that's all woo down in your heart. But to me, that is where you plug in to
it's the
where you
second
come
brain.
from. Yeah.
The heart houses the mind. In Chinese medicine, the heart houses the mind. But it is our second brain. You know, we have that nerve in the brain that connects to the heart, and it is hugely where we feel and where we have those thoughts that are felt rather than just thinking thoughts. You can feel your thoughts in. So the heart is really, really important. And
it's heart coherence as well, isn't it? You know, the Heart Math Institute. I'm a big, that word, even coherence, like what you describe, homeostasis, when you come back there, that's where true coherence, the sort of alignment is felt, is through the heart, isn't it? Because that's the heart.
It is.
Isn't it, the electromagnetic pulse out is way stronger than from the actual brain. So
yes, and that's why we get it in nature. That's why when we go out and we put our feet on the ground, it's that balance comes in straight away. You're connecting to that life force, really. That's where we get it. Nature doesn't have to be standing on the ground grounding. It could just be in your garden, going out for even a walk, anywhere where you're surrounded by nature. You'll find another really good source of that plug in again, that you can get that life force tea from. Just vitally important.
Because we are all nature, isn't it? Like, we are organic. It's so funny, you know, even a few years ago when everything started with organic food and organic this and organic that, and yet then we can be filling ourselves with an awful lot of not organic and wondering, you know, and we could, food is only one tiny aspect of it. Like,
exactly.
You know,
it is only one tiny aspect.
Yeah.
And it's a work in progress for us all. And you know, podcasts like what you're putting out are just so good. They're so important for people because, like what you say, they'll take a snippet from this today or the other beautiful podcasts that you've done, and somebody will just take something that resonates with them. It's what resonates with you right now. You hear what you need to hear at the time you need to hear it.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Stephanie. Thank you. That's it. Exactly. We're all just threads weaving together. And can I just ask you before we finish up, in terms of where, you know, we're in, as we kept, well, I was saying earlier, you know, this evolutionary period and we're energy in motion. And I think everything, whatever you follow is pointing to, it's been quickening, even on the basis. I was just looking, I'm interested in astrology personally. I know there's loads of ways to look at the world. We are going back into a period of Pluto being in Capricorn for a few months for the final big hurrah, which is the death and rebirth planet coming into, you know, the sort of structural top down, and then we'll be moving into the more, I suppose, community, decentralized, you know, that sort of energy afterwards. How do you see where we are now and what's coming, and what you'd invite people or yourself, where your sort of focus is in the coming years? What would you like to leave people with around where we are?
I think
how we can play a part, I suppose.
Well, that's the important message, that we all play a part in what's coming down the road. We are literally, no cliche, creating our own reality. We are creating by what we do, what we say, who we are. And we've seen that a world where there's negativity on the level of pain or trauma or violence, and we're seeing that everywhere right now, is serving nobody. It serves no purpose. We can't sit here from our rooms on our little corner of the world and shout from the rooftops, even though we might want to change what's going on in countries all over the world where it's horrific and it's harrowing. The change has to begin right where we are with ourselves, with our environment, with where we are in our homes, our towns, our cities, our country here. We have to make that change. We have to be the love we want to see in the world. And if we can't be that, the world is not going to be in a really good place in a couple of months' time and in a couple of years' time. Because what is happening is that shift, and you're right, we are connected to what's happening in, you know, the planets and the ethers and all this energy that's around us that we're not aware of, is changing how we're going to be able to function and cope here in this universe at this time. And there is light codes and there is new energy coming in, which won't allow us to be the way we are today, won't allow us to function. People say, what do you mean it won't allow us to function? Where you're going to be either sicker, you're going to be unwell, really unwell, that you're not going to be able to pull out of. You're going to see chaos surround you. Or you can change what's coming down the road by being the change that you want to see in the world. You be that change. And it is the only way that we're going to be able to function it is going to be a new world. And it's going to be a new world that's going to be, from who I follow and what I read and what I understand, it's going to be one of bliss. It's going to be one of pure, what we were talking about, all this conversation, pure love. It really is. But to function in it, you have to meet it. You have to meet that vibration of love and of bliss. And sitting in fear and pain and trauma won't get you there. It just won't get you there. So we have to learn to navigate, like we talked about today, ways out of that, knowing that what's coming is going to be exactly where we want to be.
So beautiful, Stephanie. I'm not going to add anything more to just such wonderful words. Thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart. That was just such a beautiful conversation. If people want to get in touch with you, I will put everything in the description box. What is the best way? Is it social media? Do you have a website?
I have a website. I'll hold my hands up. I'm not really good at social media.
I doubt you need one. You'll just
I just don't.
In.
I just don't. I mean, it sounds crazy. People just get me through my WhatsApp or my phone, or I have a website, but I do need to do a little bit of work on it. Maybe I need to clean it up a little bit. I don't know. Is this a kick in the backside to do that? But you know, anybody that wants to get in touch, you can just give them my number, my mobile number. I have no problem with that. I'll give you my website details as well.
And I'll put your social media links.
Maybe my email would be good as well, because I think I go into my email every day. I certainly don't go into my website every day. So if people want to message me, I think maybe email might be good, or through my phone.
Okay, perfect. Right. Thank you so much for your time today, Stephanie.
It's been a pleasure.
An absolute pleasure. And thank you everybody for listening. Take care until the next time. Thank you all.
Thank you.